You know, this quality heavyweight was known for two main things in his career. His first name probably was a tribute to the great heavyweight champion Gene Tunney. And of course, he was the first person to fight Muhammad Ali in a pro ring. So today we're going to be talking about a hero outside and inside the ring, Tunney Hunsaker, who gave so much as an athlete, almost died in the ring because of it, and became a peace officer who was one of the most respected of his era. Now, Tunney Morgan Hunsaker, born September 1st, 1930 in Princeton, Caldwell County, Kentucky, is best remembered again as the first pro opponent of boxing great Cassius Clay, later known as Muhammad Ali. Outside of his boxing career, Hunsaker served many years as a police chief in the beautiful community of Fayetteville, West Virginia. Now, born in Princeton, in his youth he served in the U.S. Air Force, stationed at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. Now, what happened? It was a series of coincidences that Hunsaker was chosen to be Clay's first opponent. I'm referring to him at the time being Clay. Now, after the fight, Hunsaker said Clay was as fast as lightning. I tried every trick I knew to throw him at him off balance, but he was just too good and too fast. In a thumbnail profile of the fight, the following January, young Cassius reporters have been remarked that Hunsaker's style was far different from what Clay had been exposed to as an amateur and Olympian. The young fighter admitted to nervousness going in, and that Hunsaker's aforementioned pro style had giving him trouble. This respect appears genuine, as it was lasting. In his autobiography, Ali said Hunsaker dealt him one of the hardest blows he ever took in his career. Ali and Hunsaker became good friends and stayed in touch over the years. Hunsaker said he did not agree with Ali's decision to refuse military service in the late 60s, but praised him as a great humanitarian and athlete. Learning of Hunsaker's passing, Ali commented to WV Public Radio, I have fought better fighters, but none with a bigger heart. Now, in the fight game, Hunsaker was what you would call a small heavyweight, perhaps better suited for the light heavyweight or 175-pound division. In 2025, he would most likely compete as under a 190 cruiserweight. He fought as a boxer-puncher by his own telling. Hunsaker once appeared on the undercard at MSG, which was one of the highlights of his career. He ended up with a record of 17-15 and 8 wins by knockout, which is kind of deceiving, because he was a really good fighter, but most of the fights he had, he was losing battles into the late rounds. Now, his career unfortunately ended after a boxing-related head injury suffered on April 6, 1962 in Beckley, West Virginia. Rushed to a Beckley hospital, Hunsaker was in a coma for 9 days, during which he underwent 2 brain operations to relieve pressure. Eventually, Hunsaker became the youngest police chief in the history of West Virginia, going on to serve as Fayetteville police chief for 38 years. Ironically, he was later inducted into the Law Enforcement Hall of Fame as a very dedicated purveyor of peace. Now, Hunsaker was also active in the Oak Hill Church of the Nazarene for many years, teaching a Sunday school class for 5th and 6th grade boys. He was 3 times named Sunday School Teacher of the Year. At the time of his passing in 2005, he had married to his beautiful wife Patricia for more than 30 years. Now, in the U.S. state of West Virginia, the Fayette Station Bridge, carrying County Road 82 over the New River at the bottom of New River Gorge, was named after Hunsaker. Now, Hunsaker suffered the physical effects of his last match for the rest of his life. He was 74 when he died on the 27th of April 2005, having been afflicted with Alzheimer's disease in his last years. His body was buried in Hoos Memorial Park Cemetery in Fayetteville, West Virginia. Now, this incident occurred, he had won his previous fight at the West Virginia State Penitentiary on February 24, 1962 against Thomas Dejournette. But in his match against Joe Shelton, it was a very, very hard tilt. But in the 10th round, Hunsaker was knocked out, and he eventually went to a coma for 9 days. Now, this was held at the Beckley Raleigh County Convention Center in Beckley, West Virginia, with a big crowd. Now, ironically, Sonny Banks, who later died in the ring from his injuries, had fought Hunsaker 2 fights before, and Hunsaker was knocked out in the 2nd round. Now, the win against Dejournette was a revenge match, as he lost in 8-round TKO on September 28, 1961. Now, key fighters he took on: Alejandro Lavarante, losing by KO5 in San Antonio, Texas. He again fought Cassius Clay at Freedom Hall, Louisville, Kentucky. At the time, Hunsaker had lost several fights, was down to 15-10-1. Previous to that, he took on world title challenger Tom McNeely, losing by TKO in the 9th round on April 12, 1960 in Boston. Now, the fight against Clay, of course, was a 6-rounder. Now, other key fights, he took on future champion Ernie Terrell, lost on points at Freedom Hall in Louisville, Kentucky on July 24th, 59. Now, he defeated Billy Walters, a high contender, KO1 in Fayetteville, to put him up to 14-3, which was his last big key win, of course. Now, he took on many comers during his career. A very interesting double series where he lost to Ranchero Alonso by a 6-round decision, but won the rematch over 8. And of course, those fights were back-to-back in the early 1950s in the Municipal Stadium in San Antonio. Now, he went 5-0 in his first 5 bouts, winning 3 matches against longtime rival Pat Viola, winning a unanimous decision over 6, a points decision over 6, and a unanimous decision over 4. Now, again, the Hunsaker, like I said, the first match for any fighter is important. But I think Hunsaker allowed to Ali to find out a lot what to do with a pro boxing style. Now, this was very strange as well. It's not too often a black athlete would take on a white fighter in a match like this because it was, but if you want to learn more about the fight, there's a very interesting book by, again, the great Thomas Hauser, Muhammad Ali's Life and Times, which came out in 91. Now, the accident with Hunsaker, it was kind of unforeseen this would occur, because I think at one point he was ranked top 30 in the world, because with that 15-3-1 record, that was his highest record, but he just kind of we didn't know what was going on. Now, there's various articles that talk about Hunsaker, and very interesting one was on Syracuse.com, which talked about Hunsaker's link to Ali. Now, in this article, which came on Syracuse.com, Hunsaker was interviewed in 1992, and he had some good comments about Ali, which was the week of Ali's 50th birthday. Now, he said, I saw him in the cover with that cake, talking about the 50th anniversary article in Sports Illustrated. Tunney said over the telephone, saw it just today, Sports Illustrated, with all the candles and him being all dressed up. And I said to my wife, has it really been that long? I mean, it's hard to believe. And it is. In fact, it is so difficult, so inconceivable to accept that Ali will celebrate his 50th birthday Friday that some of us will simply refuse to do so. Just because we look at Ali, who was nothing if not a breathtaking timepiece, and we see ourselves, forever childlike, forever at ease, and still floating like a butterfly in our minds. Ali has gone through a half 100 calendars, so how old does it make the of us? Hunsaker joked 62, he said Monday evening, 62 next month. Once though, it wasn't even half of that. I was 30 the night I fought him, he recalled. I gave him a hard time. Later, he said I almost lost a hamburger he'd eaten for dinner when I gave him some good chops in the stomach in the second and third rounds. But I was too old to be fighting an 18-year-old, especially an 18-year-old like him. He had these long arms and he could hit from anywhere and from any angle. And he never blinked an eye. Tunney Hunsaker, he may be professional boxing's Wally Pipp, because Justice Pipp's headache allowed Lou Gehrig to introduce himself to America. Hunsaker's chin turned out to be Ali's entree into the world. Now, according again to the article, Ali needed to start somewhere too, and that start was Tunney Hunsaker, then and now the chief of the police of Fayetteville, a sneeze along the New River in southern West Virginia, with an official population of 2,366, not counting dogs and cats. One of his main memories of Ali, he said, I remember him driving up in a brand new pink Cadillac. He said that October evening 1960. Oh, it was a beauty. He was stepping high that night, all right. And when he came into the ring with all his followers, I remember him being pretty impressed by that. Now, again, within 3 years, Ali would be fighting in England, and then Sweden and Scotland, West Germany, Switzerland, and other exotic parts in the world. There would be visits to South America, and Asia, and Africa, doing matches on the islands of the Pacific and Caribbean. Now, but it all began with Hunsaker, the police chief of Fayetteville, since 54 on Monday, was like the rest of us. Ali was only 18 when I fought him. It was 32 years ago. It's hard to believe all the time had passed. There's no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that Tunney Hunsaker, again, had the respect of boxing fans from his home region. But like I said, we all have to start somewhere. And Ali said he always had big respect for him. And the fact was, we all had big respect for him. Ali-Chuvalo once said, he said, Ali had learned a lot to fight him because of the quality of opposition he had before, because he had Sonny Banks and Daniels and in Hunsaker. But like I said, if anybody knows if he's named after Gene Tunney, his first name, I'd really like to know. So that's a story of the very, very distinguished Tunney Hunsaker. I dedicated it to all the boxing Inside the Ropes fans. Our new column name, which is our boxing column, is not new, but that's a new column and name. And Chuvalo is so much of a historian. It's too bad, his physical condition deteriorated. But he was such an historian. I think he said once, Ali learned from the white fighters more than he learned from the black fighters, which basically say because white fighters are more on a more of aggressive take. Most black fighters now in 2025, they get on the bike like Ali. It's not like a power punches. But most white fighters I watched growing up were power punchers. They could box. They were like Rocky, Sylvester Stallone. Hard punchers. Look at Marciano. Look at everybody else. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're having a great election campaign, keep on the hustings. Canadian election in 2 weeks. Don't forget to vote. And if you don't vote, what's the good of you? Have a good one. Bye.